Welcome to a new webinar. Welcome everyone. In this case, the situation that we have last time was that basically we have some people. Well, we have some issues on performing this webinar. So I apologize in advance for the delay on having this webinar today. This is a webinar about simplify your VMware migrations to OpenNebula. We will be talking about how to migrate from VMware, escape from the devil, for saying away. Well, not so much. I would like to remember that we have a series of webinars. This is a part of a series of webinars. We have had webinars about OneApps, which is another project that we have. We have a Ceph webinar, Grafana, Ansible. The last month we have one about Alma Linux. So stay tuned to check which webinars we have in the next couple of months. But let me introduce you to what is OpenNebula, just 2 minutes of your time. What is OpenNebula? Well, OpenNebula is the open source cloud and edge computing platform. We avoid vendor lock-in, minimize complexity, reduce resource consumption, and slashes operating cost. It's a virtual infrastructure. It's a virtualization platform where you can manage your private and hybrid cloud. In OpenNebula, it can work on any application, any infrastructure. OpenNebula enables to execute any app from any virtual machine and can be deployed in any cloud, meaning that we have a lot of flexibility, which is the main purpose, obviously, of OpenNebula. We have, like I say, simplicity. We have it's lightweight and easy to maintain, vendor neutral, cost effective. There's a lot of things that I cannot tell you everything in detail because it will take another webinar. So I'm going to move to the next slide, which is who is using OpenNebula. As you can see, we have people in the telco, industry, gaming, fintech, CAS, public, academia. So it's OpenNebula. It's a simple, feature-rich, and flexible solution to build and manage enterprise clouds that combine existing virtualization technologies with advanced features for multi-tenancy, automatic provision, and elasticity to offer on-demand virtualized services and applications. So take a look on to our platform. And just as a final reminder, the new OpenNebula, or the version that we are using right now, it's 6.8. In a couple of months, I will say by October, if I remember well, we will have the new version, the new platform ready to be used. But right now I cannot tell you because we are still working on the code name for the 6.10. Okay, so without any further delay, I'm going to introduce my colleague Neal, that he will be talking about OneSwap, which is the migration tool that we have for VMware. Neal, welcome to the stage.
Hello.
Perfect. I'm going to leave you the stage for you. Let me know if I share your screen right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Correct? Yeah, perfect. Let's share your screen.
Okay.
And the floor is yours.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, I'm Neal Hansen, cloud engineer here at OpenNebula. Here to talk about OneSwap today. It's a tool I've been working on for the last few months as he went over of converting VMs smoothly from vCenter over to OpenNebula in an automated sort of way. It's just a command line utility, but there's we recommend running it on like Ubuntu 24 right now, as the best packages are already ready to go. And while it's not required to run on the OpenNebula front end, we do recommend installing OpenNebula packages because it has like all the API for OpenNebula built in there. Besides that, there's a few other packages you need to install. There's some optional things that you can do as well. This is all some detail in here. This is a simplified command here. I'm using, there's a configuration file that you can use, which I'm not going to go over all these options, but this is just the kind of a formatted version of the config file. Will be updated in there into the repository soon. This just gives connection details, remove the password for reasons, and any sort of other options like skipping IP creation stuff in OpenNebula, defining networks, and I have a couple different transfer options that we put in here. The hybrid one will actually download the image directly from vCenter using RBVMomi2 library, which is a open source implementation of the vSphere API library. And then it'll convert using VirtV2V. We utilize VirtV2V because it's highly developed and has a really good track record for migrating virtual machines and converting disks to be run on KVM and any other platform. So I'm going to start this here. The one ops variable is just the connection details to my remote OpenNebula server over here. You see, we only have one image here, so we'll get this started. And while this is running, I'm going to go over a little bit more details of like the of what's happening and also what kind of options are available here. Because I'm in the hybrid mode, you can see it's kind of like a curl output. If you're used to CURL, it'll show the speed and the time left and everything of each disk as it goes through to download each of them. And then after it does that, it's going to go through and try to convert the disks. This one just has one disk right now, so it's just going to convert one at a time. It'll go in, check for any necessary changes need to be made into the internal operating system, make sure it has Vertio drivers, set up the QMIC guest agent to be installed and everything. As part of our options here in the parameters, we can define like a context path to automatically inject context. You can install it beforehand as well, which is also recommended. Then we have like certain paths for Windows drivers. We can, if you have some Vertio or you need the QMIC guest agent to be installed on Windows automatically for you, we have that as well. And we have options for scheduling of the virtual machine directly to OpenNebula specific clusters and hosts if you don't want the automatic scheduling to happen. Here we can see the VirtV2V command that this is going to be running here. It downloaded the disk to this temporary conversion directory, and you can see the output of VirtV2V coming along. The dots indicate that there's a messages coming from the internal operating system of the guest. So while it's booting and while it's inspecting everything, it'll be displaying some progress as we go. Let's see. All right, so here we go. It's going to be checking converting the guest here, and it does note this will take a long time. There's sections in here that will be paused for periods of time, but as long as it's still going, you don't have to worry about it. It essentially spawns like a little small virtual machine to do the conversion inside. So some of the other nuances to go over, I guess, it's going to be that, yeah, while we do automatically inject some of the drivers like Vertio storage, it is possible to do that. We do recommend to install them beforehand as well. We do have a boot style that was implemented recently by Encore Technology. You'll hear from them a little bit later too, but they've contributed to the system. And on that concept, this is an open public repository that you can access right now if you want to. You can report issues to us if you'd like, and you can go ahead and add pull requests, and we'll review them and go through and see if it's a good feature to implement. And I encourage you guys to do so. It's just written in Ruby. It's nothing too complex, and it utilizes the OpenNebula API, the Ruby, the RBVMomi, Ruby vSphere API, and it's really not too crazy. So here, this is in the spot where it's converting the disk. It takes the most time. This is where it regenerates like the initramfs for Linux. For any of you are familiar with that, which generally takes a few minutes. Once this is done, though, the script will go and analyze each of the disks to double check the operating system details on each of them. It'll copy them over to the front end. In this one, I'm using HTTP transfer, which is a newer feature that I've just been implementing over the last little bit, where this will it'll create an HTTP server on this machine, this OneSwap machine, and then tell the remote OpenNebula front end to download the image from here. We'll see some messages coming in from that here shortly. And until they do, let's see. We do have our full 1.0 release that just came out a little bit ago. With this HTTP feature and another one coming out, we are planning to do the 1.1 release soon as well. Okay. And let's see if there's any other of these parameters here. The VDDK thing, this is part of one of the alternate transfer styles. There's a VDDK library disk developer toolkit that's provided by VMware Broadcom. It's a little bit faster than just the default VirtV2V method. VirtV2V by default will create what's called an overlay. It uses NBDKit to open up the disk remotely and create an overlay on top of it where it can make changes without actually changing the source disk until it's necessary. So. Okay. Let's see, there's a question here. We do have some performance metrics on core technologies. We'll get into that a little bit later because they've been doing more at scale testing. I've been definitely doing testing and development here, but I generally do the smaller disks because I need to get through them quick to do all the testing and find all the odd caveats of everything. But it really depends on your network infrastructure and also the virtual machine or the physical machine that's doing the conversions, because it has to boot up essentially like a small virtual machine. Let me look in the process list here. That's a little messy, but you can see there's a QEMU system virtual machine running in here. And this is just configured to use that disk to spin up so it can do some changes internally and inspect everything properly. So this should be finishing here just shortly. I'll just finish talking about the transfer methods as well that we have. Let's see if I have okay. So the four of them in the order of performance is going to be the hybrid one because it uses the RBV-MOMI2 library to download the images first, which is one of the longest steps, is transferring the image from one place to another. And then it'll locally convert the disks, which is what it's doing here. Next is that VDK library that I mentioned. Just because of the way it interacts with the vCenter, with vSphere, it's a little bit more performative there. We also have the SSI direct SSH transfer. I've seen a lot of limitations with this one because it will it'll kind of limit itself to make sure that the performance stays good. And of course, the vCenter API is the slowest one. It's just the default direct transfer through there. So now here we finished converting the disk. It notes that it already sees Vertigo drivers in there. It's inspecting some more of the file systems, then it's copying the disk over. It says it may take a long time, but this is only a 5 gig disk, so it won't take very long at all. And then now we're going to go through these local disks and we're going to create the images in OpenNebula. That starts with inspecting the disk so we can check the internal of the disk. This should only take about 20 seconds or so. It checks what kind of operating system is there and everything, and if there's any other special requirements. And then once this is done, you'll see it'll probably very quickly go through, make the image and make the template for us, and then we can go and check out that information. Wait here and see, the images aren't quite created yet. I'll refresh it again here in a second to show you those images. All right, so you see it finished inspecting. I'm skipping context injection here for this situation. And then this is the HTTP server output for the web brick. There's a message here about waiting for the image to be ready, because what it does is it starts the download and then checks OpenNebula every few seconds to see if the image is in a ready state yet. Once the image is in a ready state, we know the images have been downloaded, so we can shut down the HTTP server safely. We have a list of all the images we created inside of OpenNebula with their IDs. And then I've just defined a default network here instead of matching up network. There's a method where if you set in the network, there's an attribute you can set to PG206, and then if it sees this attribute in the network, it'll automatically match it here. Let me see if I have this in where that was in the wiki here. And the network interface. So yeah, we have an attribute here, vCenter network match. If this attribute in your network has the name of the network, in this case PG206, it'll automatically grab that ID and use it here instead. So that's a way you can automatically assign networks without having to change each configuration each time. And then, or you can just set a default one, which I've done here for network 0. And you can see you allocate the VM template success. It gives us the ID and then deletes any of the password files we use to connect to any of the servers. I did not enable delete, so it leaves the disk here so we can inspect them just in case there's any issues. That's not required. You can definitely just delete them after. So now here we have this image that's been created. W125 is the name of the virtual machine. So this is disk 0 for that one. You see it's 5 gigs. And in the template, we can see now there's a new definition for this one that has the network ID in there, the image ID set up here. In vCenter, this had BIOS. So this one also got set up to have BIOS in the firmware. And we can instantiate this. It should only take a few seconds to boot up here. Get the prologue. Oh, we got some monitoring. Okay. All right, we can see the virtual machine is running. We can open up the VNC console and we can see that our virtual machine has been converted over to run on KVM from vCenter. I think that mostly wraps up what my presentation was about OneSwap there. If there's any extra questions about any of the process that I just went over, feel free and I'll try to respond to them.
Okay, thanks, Neal, for the presentation. I think that it covers and sums up how the tool works. This is a kind of a surprise. So, okay, we have a question from Benko.
All right.
Do you convert users, groups, access, permission from VMware to OpenNebula?
Currently, we don't. This is just for virtual machines right now. That is like a feature we can look into for sure for moving over users and stuff. If you already use something like LDAP, then the OpenNebula authentication driver will automatically handle that creation of users when they log into the new system. But if you have users and groups created in vCenter, you'd have to recreate them in OpenNebula for right now. But I'll write that down as a potential feature.
Cool. In any case, this is a kind of surprise that we have on the very last minute. We will have a real use case from Encore Technologies. So I'm going to welcome Greg Perry to the stage, and I will let him talk about the use case. I'm going to remove first the banner that we have right now about the ask questions on here in the chat or the forum. For the questions that we have right now, I'm gonna pause a little bit the answering of the questions. I'm gonna ask Greg. Greg will introduce how they did the migration, and then we will go back and ask and answer the questions. Okay. So please be patient. I'm gonna ask Greg. Greg, welcome.
Oh, hello.
Hello. Yes, we can hear you. I'm gonna remove myself, and I will let you take the stage.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, I'm Greg Perry from Encore Technologies. Traditionally, we have been a VMware shop, kind of doing standard VMware stuff, iSCSI data stores, distributed switches, things like that. After VMware kind of went crazy with their licensing prices recently, we started to kind of investigate different virtualization products and things like that. And after doing kind of a bake off and, kicking the tires on different platforms, we decided OpenNebula was the best we found to fit, our use case and making, private public clouds, things like that. So, obviously we have a big footprint of VMs and VMware. Wanted to move those to OpenNebula as painless as possible. We are a pretty big Veeam shop as well, which I believe is a common, backup product for those of you that use VMware. So originally, we tested kind of doing backups and then restoring into OpenNebula, which works, but had some pain points around it. So, we were digging around and came across this OneSwap tool. So what Neal just showed you there is how we kind of started, just taking test VMs out of VMware, converting them using OneSwap, and moving it across. So we kind of started by building ourselves some hypervisors, really similar to the VMware ones. And on the OpenNebula side, so we have 10 gigabit network connectivity as far as like data transfer for storage and VM traffic as well. We're using a NFS storage on the OpenNebula side, and when it comes to the OneSwap tool, where Neal was showing the transport modes, I wanted to go for the fastest possible, so we're using the direct SSH transfer. So we ran into a little bit of issues when it came to the original OneSwap tool, which we have since made a PR, so these things won't be an issue, but things around distributed switching, which is fixed now. We also ran into an issue, so we are not doing DHCP with an OpenNebula, so this won't necessarily apply to everyone. In our environment, we try to mimic how VMware handles VM networking, where the virtualization environment hands out MAC addresses only, and we use an external Windows-based DHCP server or statically assign, which is how VMware's vSwitch works. So OneSwap by default will keep as much data about the VM that you are converting when it's in OpenNebula. That includes things like the amount of CPU, the amount of RAM, disk sizes, things like that, the network that thing is on, and also the MAC address. So we didn't want to use VMware generated MAC addresses when it came to OpenNebula. So we kind of want OpenNebula to own the MAC address part, which is how, future VMs that are created, not converted, will be. So we we found a way using OneSwap with the contextualization scripts. OneSwap will investigate the disk of the VM you're converting and knows whether it's Windows or Linux, even Red Hat versus Ubuntu and things like that. And we were able to build, like, say, an RPM package for a RHEL-based OS to reconfigure our NICs because the MAC addresses had changed. That way the system didn't see it as like the previous MAC being removed and the new one being added. So that helped us a lot when it came to, doing bulk transfers. We didn't have to go into each system and fix things. We were able to achieve the same thing on Windows, and we're going to be doing the same thing in Ubuntu, just haven't quite made it that far yet. We're running RHEL 9 on the hypervisor side right now. That seems to be doing just fine for us. We're running RHEL on the front end as well. We're a big RHEL shop, but we do use some Ubuntu where, it is a requirement. What do we got here? Yeah, so we ended up wrapping the OneSwap tool after we got it fully working at the CLI, like what what Neal showed earlier, into our automation platform called StackStorm, which essentially does the same thing that the OneSwap CLI does, but it allows us to wrap more things around a workflow around it. So we can tell StackStorm, hey, convert this VM name, and it'll do things like, make sure the VM is powered off in vCenter, make sure that things like, UEFI or Secure Boot are turned on in vCenter that we wanted present in OpenNebula. And then it would actually, connect to my front end and run the OneSwap command, just how Neal was showing, no difference in how the OneSwap tool was functioning. But that let us do some fancy things like, have chat bots, tell us when a migration was starting. And then after the VM was instantiated in OpenNebula, StackStorm could ping the VM and tell us, hey, I had issues connecting to this thing, and we could investigate. But it also told us the VMs that we didn't have to investigate, which was really nice. It let us be pretty hands off, and we just kind of let StackStorm run through our VMs and, touch the ones that we needed to. But in the end, we're not totally done yet, but we have converted 111 VMs, and we have about a 96% success rate of VMs that we don't have to touch at all. We just let StackStorm handle it all for us. So of those 111 VMs, there are roughly 162 disks That would be like a VMDK in VMware world or an image in OpenNebula world. That is about 10.9 terabytes of space provisioned. And because it's thin provisioned on the QCal disks that we're using in OpenNebula, it's only about 2.2 terabytes of space consumed on the actual data stores. That was a little bit of a change on how the thin versus thick disk provisioning worked for us. We've traditionally thick provisioned in VMware, and one of the things the OneSwap tool does is goes through each disk and is converting it from thick to thin. So I'm going to be giving you some information about how long it took us. So the biggest VM we've done so far was a SQL VM with 5 VMDKs or disks on the VM that were about 500 gig of total space provisioned. And it took us about 4.5 hours to transfer that over a 10 gigabit network. But it seems like the majority of the time is actually spent doing the thick to thin provision. Or conversion, where you're waiting on OneSwap to kind of like look through each block of the disk and determine whether it's actually used space or open. And I have a suspicion that if we were doing thin provisioning in VMware, that our conversions would be much faster, but we haven't been able to test that yet.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. I'm gonna add Neal as well to stage, just in case someone who wants to ask questions. We have some questions already on the chat. Thanks, Bradley, for replying as well. Just to comment, I will say hi to the people in the Cloud Admins Telegram group that probably are watching, especially George, that he's supporting us with promoting this webinar on the Telegram group. And probably we have some other Telegram channels around. But anyways, thanks for that. Thanks, Greg, for sharing these stories. Super useful, super interesting. I think that this is something that we are working very hard from OpenNebula in terms of making a tool accessible and adaptable and easy to help on the migration. So thanks for sharing your use case. I think it's something that usually it's very valuable in terms of proving that this tool works. Sometimes we talk about something and we cannot know if the tool works or not, and this is a real example. So I appreciate that.
Very much so.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, well, I have Pablo, hello as well. Pablo, another usual suspect here on the webinars. Okay, so I don't know if you have any other question, comment. In any case, like I say before, and there's on this lovely banner, you can ask your questions here or visit our chat at forum.opennebula.io, where we have there's a forum, a discourse forum, where you can ask any question you have, not only about VM migration, but also about anything related to the platform or to any development project that you have or integration that you have with OpenNebula. Okay, so let's move to the end of this webinar. So we are hitting now half an hour, and there's no many questions, and all the questions were completely answered. Again, thanks, Bradley. Thanks, Greg, for participating, even with no webcam, but thanks for participating. It was super insightful, super useful, the story, so thanks a lot. And thanks, Neal, for being our speaker for today.
Of course.
So anything that you need to ask about VMware migration, go to the forum, and Neal, Alberto Picon, or any of our colleagues will be happy to answer. Okay, I'm gonna remove people from the stage. Thanks again. Hope to see you soon. And like I say, questions and answers sent to the forum. No much to say on that aspect. I would like to thank you, everyone, for participating today, especially the people on Core Technologies. We will be having a break for summer. It's summertime here in the North Hemisphere. So we will have a break probably until the first week of September. Around September, we'll be returning. And don't forget that we have our OpenNebula Con at the end of this month. If you go to our website, OpenNebula.io, you will find the information. Also, if you visit, let me share the page. If you're visiting OpenNebula conferences and all that, let me share the here. If you visit this page, you will be able to register, find the information, and yeah, OpenNebula.io. It's a little bit long. Probably I need to put it on the comment here. If you visit here the conference, the page for the conference, you will be able to register for free. We have announced our first round of speakers. We have E1 Solutions, Storepool, and Full Stack S as our main sponsors. So thanks for the sponsor for participating in this conference. It's everything online like this. You don't have to listen to me, well, in a couple of sessions probably, but feel free to register. We will be covering a lot of things, virtualization, automation, AI ops, community, virtual machines, migration from VMware, a lot of topics, a lot of things. The agenda will be online soon. And that's it for my side. Thanks again, everyone, for participating, for making your questions, and we'll see you in after summer for the next webinar. So stay tuned. Thank you. Bye-bye.